She's an award-winning writer, a hunting guide, archery and rifle instructor, keynote speaker, and all-around outdoors woman who encourages you to get outside, hunt, fish, shoot, and savor all that life has to offer. And now, here's your host, Mia Anstein.
Hey guys, hi, hello. Welcome to the Mac Outdoors podcast. It is great to be chatting with you again. If it is your first time stopping by, then welcome. I hope that you enjoy today's topics and that you will consider subscribing while you're here. If you're already a subscriber, then welcome back. I'm glad that you're here and I welcome your feedback, input, and support. Today, I'm going to be sharing the answers to a couple of friends and followers' questions. First, we'll discuss concealed carry waist holsters, and after that, I'm going to share some information about communication options for friends who wanted to know what to do if their cell phones lose service. But first, a word from our affiliates. Be right back.
This winter, stay warm from head to toe with WSI Sports' heater gear layers. Use Leah's affiliate code, LLCO10, at WSISports.com and get 10% off your order. All products are proudly made in the USA. WSI Sports is bringing back pride in American-made clothing. That code once again, LLCO10 for 10% off at WSISports.com.
All right. Thank you to WSI and their affiliate program. They have excellent gear to keep you warm in the cool temperatures and to keep you cool during the warm temperatures. Did I say that correctly? I think I did. Anyways, go check them out, WSI Sports. I do always look forward to using their gear. I wanted to talk to you guys about concealed carry. And a friend of mine asked about an elastic waistband holder for a firearm. And this person, she didn't want to carry in her purse, but hadn't really gotten into carrying on her body yet. And so she wanted some ideas about what is my favorite and what to get, basically. So I wanted to share one of my favorites and also some tips for you about how to choose a favorite. So just to start off, I like the Can concealment waistband holster, and I like that one. I tried that out originally with Remington Firearms down at Gunsight Academy, and they let us demo those with some of the Remington handguns, and I definitely liked them a lot. And one thing about the Can is if you're looking for that holster or a similar one, because I do have some other belly band holsters that I like, and some of them are generic off-brands. I'll put some links in the show notes to one that I got on Amazon and that you might like. But I'll give you some suggestions when you're looking for one. Look for one that has support. So when I talk about support, I mean it should have some type of vertical, either like a plastic wire, kind of think of like an underwire type of thing, but a vertical support that will keep the belly band holster from curling up on itself. So look for something that has some support to it. And when you go to shop for a belly band holster, don't try to think you're skinny. And if you're, I don't know if men do this, but ladies, if you have gone shopping and you look at the size of a garment, you might be like, oh, well, I'm not a size 6, I'm a size 4. And even though the size 6 fit better, you go for the size 4 because you want to be smaller. Don't do that with the belly band holster. Look at their sizing charts. If they don't have a sizing chart, get in touch with the company and find out the sizes. They do have a little bit of adjustment, but you definitely want to get one that fits. You don't want it to be too tight, because if it's too tight, you're going to have huge rolls over the top of it and it's going to look terrible and it's going to be very uncomfortable. But also, conversely, you don't want it to be too big, because then you're going to have it sliding around. It's not going to stay in place. Also, when you're looking check the pouches, not just the gun pouch, but the magazine pouch. Make sure that the gun pouch has some type of a hasp or a latch or a Velcro loop or some type of mechanism that will secure your firearm in the holster, because you don't want to be sitting down and have your gun pop out, and you want it to be secure in there. Whether you're going to carry on your appendix side on the belly, or if you're going to carry it on the back above your backside, you definitely want to make sure the gun can be secured in there. Some of these holsters have a hook and loop type closure, and some are Velcro. That I feel like is a personal preference. I do know the hook and loop ones. I have a thigh holster that's hook and loop, and it's sometimes cumbersome to put on. So the Velcro, it's loud when you're putting it on, it's loud when you're taking it off, but it's pretty easy to get it in the right place. So that's something to consider. Also, once you get a holster, you are definitely going to need to practice your draw. You can contact me via my email. It's contact@miaanstein.com, or you can message me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, MeWe, Twitter, all of them. Direct message me and we can set up an appointment where we can talk about how to draw. Maybe we can do a video call about how to draw, or even better, find a firearms trainer in your area that works with concealed carry and have them teach you how to draw from your holster. One thing about carrying on your body that's different from your purse, and really I shouldn't say it's different, because you always have to be mindful of this thing. You want to be very careful not to muzzle sweep yourself. If you are drawing from your back, you're going to need to pick your elbow up and rotate your shoulder and arm so as to not muzzle sweep yourself, but also you don't want to muzzle sweep anybody around you. So this is something that's very awkward at first, and you want to take a lot of time to practice so that you don't have any bad things happening when you are handling your firearm. Whether you're just holstering it or you're taking it off for the day, always, always, always be mindful of where your muzzle is pointed. Something that you may consider is keep your gun completely empty. Make sure you check the chamber, drop the magazine, double check it, and then practice this process of holstering and unholstering your gun. And speaking of that, there is another aspect in the pocket of the holster where you're going to be placing your firearm. You want to make sure that that has some support so that nothing is going to be touching the trigger of that gun. It needs to have some type of a support so that if you're leaning back on your jacket, if your jacket had a button, the buttons on your jacket aren't going to be depressing the trigger. So make sure that that pocket in that holster is going to protect the trigger guard and the trigger. I know some of us carry for self-defense, but I originally started concealed carrying during hunting season and when I was hiking. And it wasn't because of self-defense from people, it was because there are lions and tigers and bears. Oh, I mean, not tigers, but there are mountain lions and there are black bears in the area where I live. So I wanted something as defense when I was in the woods. I will, in a future episode, talk to you about less lethal means of defense. And that's something that can be helpful, not just in the woods, but if you're in an area where you're not allowed to carry. So stay tuned for that in a future episode.
For the love of the outdoors, open spaces, and mountains, shop www.mia.limited/one. The Mac Outdoors Mountains Are Calling series of apparel is perfect for you or your loved ones. Support the channel and shop now. www.mia.limited/one.
All right, so another question that I had presented to me is one that I am going to try to touch on kind of briefly, there are books written about this. And in fact, I will put links to some books in the show notes, and I will also put links to some of the topics and items that I'm going to be including in this brief synopsis. So what was posed to me is, and I know that this was a question because of the recent events of social media sites being shut down and web browsers, people who own servers kicking people off and all that kind of thing. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. But the question is, what will we do and how will we communicate if our cell phone signal is gone? Well, I live in the mountains in Colorado, and I tell you what, there are plenty of places where there's not a signal, especially when I'm up in the mountains hunting or where we pasture our cows. There's not a cell signal there. And something that I actually enjoy is being in the mountains without a signal. And if you enjoy hiking, if you enjoy the outdoors, you may understand what I'm talking about. You might even embrace that, as I do, because I really do enjoy the times when I can be up in the wilderness and not have the call of technology or that addiction to constantly check social media and that sort of thing. So if it's something you haven't done, then definitely try it. Get off the grid where you don't have cell service and you don't have access to all of those things, because it is quite enjoyable. So what would you do if you didn't have a cell signal, and how will you communicate? Well, you right away think back to old school, like rotary dial phone and stuff like that. And that, I suppose, a landline is an option. Something that goes along with this when we're talking about it is, for our cell phones, they can be turned off with the flip of a switch. Okay. I'm sure telephones can be as well nowadays, the way technology is and the fiber optic lines and so forth. But one thing about all of the things that I'm talking about today is you need to have a power source. And so you've got to consider that. I carry a SunJack solar charger with me when I'm up in the mountains. And yeah, I don't have a cell signal, but I do like to use my cell phone as a camera, and I can use that solar charger to charge my cell phone so that I can take pictures while I'm up in the mountains. And in a future episode, I'll talk to you about some apps that I have for taking pictures and so forth. But I digress. So you need to have a power source, whether it's lithium batteries, regular batteries, or whatever the means is going to be. You may even want to use a generator. Heck, I use generators to power my welder when I'm out working. So that is a possibility also. When we're looking at these different things, I want to talk to you about radios. And this is something that we used to play with when we were kids. We had the little low power walkie-talkies and stuff like that. And those are kind of like a family style radio. There's different types of radio. So let me start with that, and I'll talk to you about different types of radios where you can communicate. Again, you're going to need a power source for these. But when if you're in close proximity to one another, you can use those standard multi-use radios. And I usually, this time of year, I'm at SHOT Show in Vegas, and I have meetings set up with different companies, and one that I meet with almost every year is Midland Radio. But if you look at Midland Radio's site, they have, common handheld walkie-talkie style radios, and those, you push the button and you talk and then you let off and you listen. I actually, when I was in college, I worked on a highway crew, and we would use that to communicate when we couldn't see one another and couldn't wave. So it's something that's very common. And actually just 10-15 years ago, we used to use them when we were guiding hunts up in the wilderness. So those type of radios, they can only reach so far, and the wattage and the power in them isn't too strong. So you are limited to your distance, and you also can't get too far if you have big mountains in the way. So you might want to look for something more powerful. And that's where we get into nowadays. There are some devices that are fairly common, and they're Family Radio Service, or FRS, or General Mobile Radio Service, GMRS. And these, they're different radios, but they kind of overlap and they can work together. And sometimes you can get packages that have both in there. And basically they overlap because they use the same channels. And so when you are using these radios, they'll have channels in the airwaves, and that way you're not like picking up on one person's conversation or another. And so these radios, you don't have to have a commercial license or a license to use because of the airwaves that they are on. And you actually may end up hearing someone else's conversation, in which case you can talk to your family member and agree to change to a different channel if somebody in that proximity is using the same channel as you. This is something that you'll just have to agree with ahead of time. But the GMRS radios are actually some that a lot of farms use, and they use those to just communicate when they are talking to people out in the fields or across the ranch or something like that. You do need to have a license to operate the GMRS radios, and that is going to cost you, I believe, $75 or $85. As I said, I'll put some links in the show notes for you. But that radio, there's not a test that's involved. I'm going to talk to you about some other radios that are going to require some testing. And so this all depends on what kind of reach you're wanting to get with the radio, what your purpose is. If it's just simply to communicate with your family members or employees or something, then maybe these FRS or GMRS radios are the way you want to go. The other one is one that I had when I was in college, and I remember as a kid I used to play in my godfather's semi and use his CB. And we all knew what CB radios were when I was a kid. And if you didn't know, what CB stands for is Citizens Band. And that CB radio, it's been around for, I don't know, 3 or 4 decades or something like that. But not many people use it anymore. Maybe some of like the off-roading clubs and semis, still some of them use that too. But that also, it has a little more power, but it's still not a ton of power. And there are things you can do to reach further, and most of what you can do to reach further is in the antennas that you can get for a CB radio. But even better than a CB radio is what they call a ham radio, and that's an amateur radio. And it's not a CB, it's more powerful. And again, the way you can reach even further is all in the antennas. And you can even communicate with people hundreds of miles away, if not all the way around the world. So the ham stations, they are extremely powerful. They have some restrictions, but you're going to definitely need to get a license. And that, again, I told you I will put a link in the show notes to where you get your license to run that. And that's called an amateur radio license. And you have to take a test for that one. The other one I told you about, you just have to pay the $75 or $85. You don't have to take a test. You just pay to use that system. Where with the ham radio, you've got to take a license because it's actually monitored by the FCC, so the Federal Communications Corporation. And you're going to want to learn about that. So I hope that gives you a little bit of insight and information into ways to communicate when your cell phones aren't working. If you have questions on that, I do know the ham radio would be the best if you're considering being a prepper, if you're looking into prepping, and it's your best option. You can get the emergency alerts and so forth if there is a tornado or if there is some type of natural disaster and the airwaves are overloaded as far as your cell signal and so forth, then you would want a ham radio, and then you can communicate and you can also hear the alerts. So that is something that you might consider. as I mentioned, there are actually like whole books that are written about the ham radio systems, about prepping and so forth. And I'm mentioning prepping because I feel like the way the question was posed to me was in a prepper sort of way, and not for the zombie apocalypse, but for any type of disaster that may come upon our country. Something that I do want to mention to you are a couple of things that you might want to consider when you're looking for a radio. I did mention Midland Radios. They do have a variety of radios. You can check packages there. I'm not sponsored by them, but they are one that I just have a lot of familiarity with. So check them out. But things that you want to look at the range, how far you can reach with just the standard antenna, and see if it comes with an antenna when you're looking for the radio. Also, the number of channels, and if you can get extra channels. Some radios you can get privacy codes. You can scan channels. Maybe you would want to scan channels to see which channel the emergency broadcast is on. Weather scans and weather alerts. You don't have to have this type of radio to get weather alerts and scans, but it is something that you can get in conjunction. If you're just wanting the weather alert radios, then you can save a lot of money and get something that's not a communication radio. So look at that. Look at methods of power, whether it has battery backups, whether there are extended batteries, if they have adapters for AC/DC, stuff like that. Some have drop-in chargers, so that's something else. Check that out if it has a drop-in charger, and also check the battery life and how long it takes to charge. Those are all things that you might consider when you're looking for a radio. If you have more questions on this, let me know. As I said, it's kind of a brief overview, but if you want to know more, message me. You can email me, contact@miaanstein.com, or direct message me on social media, and I'll be happy to answer your question on a future episode. In the meantime, I do appreciate all of you and your support, and I enjoy receiving your questions so that I can share them with you here. Thank you for supporting the Mac Outdoors podcast. If you feel so inclined, I would love it if you left me a review on iTunes and let me know what you think. Until next time, I hope you have a great one, and I'll be chatting with you again. Bye, guys.
Hey, this is Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, host of the Armed Lutheran Radio Podcast, reminding you that the podcast you're listening to is a proud member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. Check out all the great content at selfdefenseradio.net.